We're diving into bankruptcy and insolvency. Such wonderful topics here. What happens when you hit rock bottom? Well, actually, as we'll see, you don't have to hit rock bottom to go through the bankruptcy process, whether you're a business or an individual. Let's dive in. Well, these are processes designed to help individuals and businesses, right? It's actually sometimes a good thing rather than it being a bad thing with a negative connotation. Bankruptcy can be a positive tool for those who are unable to meet their financial obligations, help people to kind of start off on a new slate. Oh, I think I messed up expressions there. Get a clean slate and get up on a new foot. All right, well, I guess it does both of those things. And yes, both of these, whether they're laden with debt, maybe times have gotten a little tough, it helps individuals and businesses bounce back so that they can continue on to financial prosperity in the future. Hopefully. Don't we all hope? These processes provide a framework for managing debt and restructuring financial affairs, but they also involve complex legal procedures and requirements. So first off, we're going to want to understand the whole bankruptcy process, the benefits, pros, cons, all that good stuff, as well as the ordering of bankruptcy, any specific rules and regulations that you need to follow, what types of bankruptcy you're going to use if you're an individual versus business, and what outcome you want. Now in this lesson, we're going to explore the rights of debtors and creditors. So debtors are the ones going into bankruptcy. Creditors are the ones demanding their money back, as well as the different types of bankruptcy and the rules that apply to each. We're also going to examine the concept of discharge of indebtedness in bankruptcy, which is the process by which a debtor is released from certain types of debt. That is definitely where you want to see yourself, getting rid of that debt. Throughout the lesson, we're going to use specific scenarios to illustrate the rights and responsibilities of both debtors and creditors, and we're going to explore the different types of bankruptcy that may be applicable in each case. Common types of multiple choice questions are going to ask what type of bankruptcy is this situation describing, what type of bankruptcy would be best for this individual or for this business or for this entity. Be prepared for those. And by the end of this lesson, you will have a solid understanding, and if you don't, we will come and find you, of the legal frameworks surrounding bankruptcy and insolvency, and you're going to be able to identify the type of bankruptcy that may be appropriate in a given scenario. Well, I like the type of bankruptcy that frees me of my obligations and sets me on a great path. We're going to find out what that is and more, and let's dive right in. We've got 6 basic types of bankruptcy under federal law. Now, we're not going to have to know all these types. We're only really have to know 3 types. And just as a note in general, this lesson is going to have a lot of repetition, just like a lot of other lessons, and that's on purpose. Repetitive learning, that's one of our pillars here, and that is significantly going to help you. Memorizing what you need to know, beating it to death in your mind, you will be an expert at this. Now, we've highlighted in blue which are the more important types that you'll actually need to know. Straight up, you really won't need to know chapter 9, 12, and 15 here. It's just for your understanding, painting a whole picture. It's not like I have a lot of useless information here. Let's be real, you know me. Bare bones, what you need to know for the exam. So chapter 7, that is total liquidation. Chapter 11, reorganization. And chapter 13, adjustments of debts of individuals with regular income. I would, memorize these in parentheses for sure. These are descriptions, or brief descriptions of these types of bankruptcy. And then obviously we'll memorize the attributes of each. Now, in chapter 7, a trustee is going to be appointed to collect and liquidate the debtor's assets using the proceeds to pay off creditors. Keep in mind, this is a super brief introduction of all these. Again, we're diving into them super in depth. Bankruptcy used to be a lot more heavily tested, not as much anymore. Who knows? It can fluctuate. Make sure you're studying up on this. Chapter 7, again, this is total liquidation. You will likely not have many of the assets you had before the bankruptcy, after the bankruptcy. And just to talk as well, insolvency. What does that mean? Because bankruptcy, a little more straightforward. You're going through the bankruptcy process. It's a legal process. What does insolvency mean? Well, think about solvency ratios when we're dealing with financial accounting, assets and liabilities. It's generally what they're dealing with. More so balance sheet. Are you solvent? Now, are you solvent? Well, are your assets greater than your liabilities? Then you're solvent. If we liquidated today, tried to use all of our assets to pay off our liabilities, is that a positive number? Then you're solvent. Are the liabilities greater than the assets? Then you're insolvent. If you've got $10,000 in the bank account and then you just go swipe your credit card for $15,000 and that's all the economic activity you have, you are technically insolvent. Now, maybe you'll make some income to pay that down, but that's what we're dealing with here is when an individual or an entity is insolvent, essentially when their liabilities are going to be greater than their assets. Debts are discharged for individuals here for Chapter 7 or wiped out for artificial entities. We're going to see the distinguishing factors between individuals because individuals are going to exist afterward, right? Artificial entities, such as corporations, they can be shut down after bankruptcy, whereas your can't really shut down a person. It's not like they lock you up forever if you go bankrupt and put you under. That's not how that works. Now, in Chapter 13, debtors with regular income repay a portion of their debts over 3 to 5 years, with a trustee overseeing the process. Remaining debts are discharged at the end of the proceeding. Chapter 11 is often used by businesses, but is also available to individuals. So again, these would be great criteria to know and memorize for questions that you see on the exam. If you know you're dealing with a business, you're going to use certain types of bankruptcy. If you know you're dealing with an individual, again, you'll use other types. Now, this does not typically require a trustee. The debtor keeps their assets, which that's a big plus, right? So you might be thinking, oh, it sounds a lot better to keep your assets at the end of the process. Well, we'll see there's pros and cons to everything, just like with all choices in life. And a reorganization plan is adopted to pay off debts at altered terms. We'll see real life examples of these various bankruptcy types because examples are always a great way to learn and memorize everything. Creditors are paid to the extent possible, and the business continues. We're actually going to see some overlaps with our entities such as corporations, partnerships, S corps, all of those, because when you are liquidating the entity, right, think liquidating distributions, if there's not enough assets to go around, that's a great tie-in with bankruptcy. And I know in business structures lesson and a lot of those other lessons dealing with the entity types, I've referenced what's going on here. So just keep that in mind as well. Got to connect all the dots, all of these beautiful lessons. A trustee is going to be required for 7 and 13, whereas for Chapter 11, a trustee is not required. And that's important. I've memorized that. You can just see a multiple choice question on that. Despite this, if a trustee is needed, the court may appoint one. This is just something to memorize. There's no terms on memorizing who can be a trustee, really. That's not important. Just know that a trustee would be required. A corporation or partnership may voluntarily or involuntarily be petitioned into Chapter 7 bankruptcy. That's something interesting. Again, we'll see. Voluntarily, you could say, yeah, we don't think we'll be able to pay our debts. And then we are going to say, we want to apply or petition for bankruptcy. And the courts may say, yeah, you're not really going to be allowed to go bankrupt because of various factors we'll talk about. If they're trying to use the bankruptcy process to benefit unjustly, and then we are going to get punished, right? We're not going to be allowed to go through the process because this is a tool. It's a blessing. It's actually not a curse. You may think it's a curse. Oh, I went bankrupt, right? Playing Monopoly. Oh, I went bankrupt. But no, this is a positive, hopefully positive, beneficial tool that individuals and businesses can use to get off the ground. And I keep saying that over and over because I want to kind of instill that mentality if this is not something you're too familiar with, because otherwise you'd have kind of the wrong connotation going into all of this. Now, regardless of the reason the entity is dissolved, because this is liquidation, right? So you're getting totally liquidated. Again, people cannot be liquidated. Entities can be dissolved, whereas an individual goes through bankruptcy, they are discharged. So individuals get discharged in bankruptcy, entities get dissolved in bankruptcy, if it is liquidating bankruptcy. Whereas we see with Chapter 11, that is reorganization. So we get reorganized. For example, we'll talk about it, but General Motors, big high topic one there from a little financial crisis that happened just a bit ago. And that company still exists. It went through reorganization. They adopted a new plan. That one was actually big enough that the government got involved. They stepped in. Well, I guess the courts are the government, but the federal government got involved. I remember at the time Obama was talking on TV, talking about it. Yes, we're going to get General Motors through this process, and because they're such a big employer in the United States, right? That's a kind of the reason why that happened as well. We want to get them on their feet. Whereas we think Lehman Brothers, they did not fare so well in the financial crisis. They're not around anymore. All right, that's a pretty big introduction. We're still diving in, having a good time, getting a good basis and foundation for what we're going to see throughout this lesson. Hey there. Are you ready to not only pass your CPA exams, but truly understand and enjoy the material while studying? I know it seems impossible, right? Especially to enjoy the material? We'll do it together. Tap into the power of CPA.examprep.ai, where we've got personalized quizzes, multiple choice questions, memorization guides, flashcards, simulations, all tailored to your learning. Our adaptive study planning puts you on the fastest path to success and lifts you back up if you fall behind. Avoid wasting your precious time and money attempting an exam with a low chance of passing, because who wants that? We want to get you through this process as quick as possible. Our exam readiness prediction lets you walk in with confidence, knowing that you're prepared for success on exam day. Thankfully, there's no payment method needed to get started, so why don't you come join us? Visit cpa.examprep.ai and let's achieve your exam success together.